It's beautiful here right now.
It's so great. So, for our listeners who may not otherwise know you, I did a pretty decent job of your intro, but I want to start with a question which I think you'll be able to answer very well, which is, I know you're a multinational kind of successful coach for business and personal, but did you ever have a time when you thought, I can't keep doing it this way?
Look, for me, I think there's definitely been a lot of challenging times. There's definitely been times of frustration and learnings and ups and downs. But I think at the core of it, I've always known that there is no other option other than to succeed. So I've been extremely committed in terms of going, this is my big vision and here's the impact I'm put here to create in the world and driving towards that. So I don't think there's been a moment where I thought I'm going to throw it all in, but there's definitely been times of challenge, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know there was a part of time, like you started your first business really early, right? Like
right.
Quite young.
Yes.
And then, the apple cart got totally turned on its head, but you just kept on rocking.
Oh, I just lost you there for a second.
Yeah, got me?
Yep, got you back now.
So, you got me? You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down this other app here.
Okay.
Hold on a quick sec.
Cool.
Because I'm getting ba-ding everywhere over here. Yeah, killing it. Good. So I'm going to close that entirely so you people can't get me. Good. Okay, let's do it again.
Awesome.
So, yeah, you started your first business pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the apple cart got fully upset on you, but you just kept on going. How do you think you had, or had you already developed resiliency, or, like, how did you manage to keep on going without being like, yeah, right, I'm just going to go out and get a job?
Yeah, look, I think there's a few things that come into play. One has been totally obsessed with just trying to succeed. I really was totally obsessed and still am with going all in with my big vision and what I'm put here to do in the world. But I think it's also knowing that at the core of it, in my eyes, there's no success and there's no failure. So in times where I think other people might have said, wow, you failed, this is a big time of failure. For me, it was like, okay, well, there's no success and there's no failure, and that means there's only feedback. So what do I need to feed back to myself right now? What do I need to learn so that I can shift forward and then move?
That's perfect. I like that. Because while you were saying it, I'm like, I don't really know. I mean, there is failure. I've been kicked in the face a lot myself, and there is success. I felt pretty good a few times, but your point being, it's all feedback is 100%. I totally agree. I think it's interesting because, and I think on your website it's at a success coach or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious because I think a lot of people are out there in this genre, right? Talking about being successful, and at least in my work, I find the definition of success is so varied, really, when you get to the heart of it. When a person is totally honest with you, what they really want is very different. But on the surface, everyone's out there posting about making money and doing this and that and whatever the case. And I think it makes a lot of people feel like they're not there, or they're not good enough, or what they want to achieve isn't, I don't know, worth it. Do you find that when you're talking to people, their success is a lot different than what down the middle success, via Facebook or Insta success looks like?
Yeah, totally. And I think success is different to each and every single person. And I think it's actually a reason why a lot of people don't create the success that they desire, is because they get wrapped into someone else's version of success, thinking that must be success, so I'm just going to go and create that, when it's not actually in alignment and in integrity with what they truly desire at their core. So for me, success is really doing whatever I want on my terms in whatever way I want with whoever I want. So in other words, it's really just having options. And then I think it's from, it's really up to the individual to go, well, what do those options look like for me, and what am I looking to manifest in my life? And that's when you get clear on what is success for me. But yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people unconsciously see other people that are quote unquote successful, and they think, well, that must mean success, so I must need to go and create that. And again, they either don't create it because it's not in alignment, or they end up creating it and not feeling fulfilled.
Well, yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people along the way go, oh, this is just too hard, or I don't like, or what, because whatever that other person's version of success would be giving them positive feedback. But for the other person who's just kind of replicating it, it doesn't feel as good because not what they're, they're not desirous of those outcomes.
Right.
Right. So for some people, it's not about the money, and for other people, it totally is. Right. So if you have a good-hearted mission, going out and being good-hearted is great. But if you're all about the money and you go out and kind of emulate someone's good-hearted mission, you're not going to love it.
Right.
And you're going to die in the vine. I see that happen a lot. So I want to talk really briefly though about a word that you said. So manifest. I just actually had a email battle with not battle, maybe is a bit strong of a word. There was no bloodshed, but an email conversation that was interesting with a woman about manifesting things. So I'm interested in your kind of opinion or what you think about maybe having a manifesto versus manifesting things.
Totally. Well, it's interesting you ask that because I truly believe that manifestation is actually our natural state. And, if everyone was to look around their life and everything that they have in their life and every person they have in their life, good, bad, or ugly, they've manifested all of it. Now, the thing is that for a lot of people, it's unconscious manifestation. So it's their unconscious mind, going to work and really, calling in the things which are under the surface, which are driven by their unconscious belief systems and structures. So the fun part with manifestation is when we start bringing it into our conscious reality. And when we start going, well, if I was actually in control of what I was manifesting, if I got to choose what I called into my life, what would that be and how would that look? And, then going through a manifestation process from there and being quite intentional about it. And I think, the majority of people have forgotten how powerful they really are. And they've forgotten that, they really have kind of these superpowers which they can tap into. And it's, really exciting for me when I see people dive into that.
Yeah, I like what you say around that it's kind of a culmination of the unconscious being brought into the conscious state, because I hear a lot of people saying, I'm manifesting wealth, I'm manifesting whatever. And I'm like, no, because you're not working.
Right.
I don't know. You can't just sit around and be like, oh, I'm manifesting, $1 million.
Right.
Maybe you'll win the lotto on the super outside chance. But
right.
outside of that, it's all work.
Right.
That's not to make it negative. I think people also hear the word work and think it's some kind of negative thing.
Right.
But I just feel, I feel like there's been too much kind of natter in the space around manifesting things when really, to your point, it's bringing that unconscious thing forwards into consciousness and making a proper effort to control what it is that you bring in and how you do that.
Absolutely. And I think, there's a lot of talk about the law of attraction and people get really excited and they watch The Secret and they say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to think positive and visualize and do a vision board and it's all going to show up. And it's like, really? Yeah. Do you know one successful person where it just showed up, where someone just knocked on the door and here it all is? And so I really believe it's kind of having a dance and learning to play between those two worlds of the inner world of visualization and, internal creation, but then also doing the work and taking action. And for me, manifestation comes down to, I guess, 3 really simple steps. The first one, locking in what you truly desire to manifest. It's not enough to say, oh, I want to manifest financial freedom. Well, what is that? How much money is that? How much more money is that? If you're not clear on what you want, you're never going to get it. So it's being specific about it. And then the second step for me, it's actually releasing the need to control and to know how it's all going to happen. People get obsessed with controlling the process and they think, I'm going to manifest an extra $1,000 and it's going to happen like this. And then that actually closes off options for the world trying to give that $1,000 to you. So it's actually releasing the need for knowing how it's going to happen. But the critical step, which is what you just brought up, Kelsey, is the third step of going, well, okay, if this was already done, what would I be doing right now in order to have this manifest faster? And then taking massive aligned action from that place and showing up and doing the work and taking the steps, but still in a sense where you're open to how it's going to happen, right? So it really is a dance. I believe it's a dance between surrendering to the how, but also taking massive action at the same time.
Yeah, so I was on your blog, and you have a recent post that talks about choosing to be flexible. So I'm gonna tell you what I think, and I'll be interested in your feedback. So I think that, again, there's this notion of work-life balance people talk about a lot, and I hate the question. It gets asked to me all the time when I do press. And the reason I dislike the question so much is because of how I think we've framed this conversation, that there's this like nirvana moment where the skies part and like your car is clean and your house is managed, and you just came from yoga and there's no emails left unanswered in your inbox. It's like this, it's like the perfected moment is happening at all times, and everything is in equilibrium and balance. And so I often say, you can't have it all, but you can have what you want most in proportion to your values. Because I would like to both travel the world and not work, whilst also meeting amazing people and working full time, whilst also spending all my time with my children and my husband. But the reality is I want a lot of things, and I want them in grand proportions. But the reality is, in order to kind of find a balance, I can't control my way to that.
Right.
I can't hyper schedule my kids and my life, because someone's going to get the flu. And someone at work is not going to read the contract and figure out that it wasn't vetted properly. Like shit is going to happen. Excuse my language, but it is. And so I have to go, right, I'm 40 years old. This is where my life and career sit. I am not going to be not working at all and or working all the time. All these kind of things. And I think this notion of flexibility is very contrarian, and I'm stoked that you wrote about it, because I wholly agree with you. I think we have to get less with our hands and our white knuckling on the wheel of control,
right? And
recognize that we have to be a bit more open to the notion that we are not the all-controlling power, and that we actually control a really small proportion of what happens to us in the day. And it's about becoming responsive instead of reactive.
Yes.
And balancing the self piece. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I totally agree with you. I've been sitting here nodding and smiling and, and agreeing and just going, yes, it's correct. So at the core of it, I really believe that the most successful people in life simply are the most flexible people, because exactly like you said, shit happens. Life happens to everybody. It's never going to go according to plan. There's always going to be things that pop up, and that it's not that when you've reached some level of success that stops happening. In fact, it maybe happens even on a grander scale, because you have more responsibility and more obligation and bigger problems and more going on. You're busier, so that it actually gets worse. Now, why is it that successful people can live into more bliss a lot of the time and the lifestyles that they create? It's not that these things don't happen to them, it's their capacity to move through them. Exactly like you said, it's a choice around being responsive or reactive to something. And it's simply, for me, it's going, okay, cool, shit's blowing up right now. Okay, interesting. Let's just stop for a second. Let's just recognize this is happening. And then simply going, okay, well, what would the higher version of me do to move through this with ease and grace right now and get to the other side? And then taking that action instead of getting stuck in it and consumed by it and living into drama and meditating on it for a day. You've got a choice in terms of how quickly you move through it. So I agree with you. I think successful people are the most flexible people in life, and I also believe that if you want to move through all of that faster, it's simply catching these things and looking at how do you move faster instead of having these moments in time or these dramas consume you.
Yeah, 100%. I think well, I'll often say if you want to be an exception, if you want to be exceptional, you must be an exception to the rule, right? And so I think oftentimes what happens is we create a rule around what we think successful people do, or people empowered do, or whatever, right? Successful people go on holidays and don't touch their phones. Right. So then therefore I am not going to do that. Or successful people do this, or whatever the case may be, right? Successful people are the boss and it goes their way, damn it. And I think that, more often than not in my own life, and I'd be interested for you to hear what you have to say about it, it's when I've bent my own rules or broken my own rules. And lots of times my rules, quite frankly, were just rules that came up to serve a certain situation, but may not apply to the new reality. Right. Those are the times when it's like, rocket fuel, right? I leapfrog a situation, go, oh my gosh, thank God I didn't stick with like, I absolutely never ever, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Would that sound true for you as well?
Yes, it's totally true, and it's so interesting that we can kind of, you know, form these, I guess, opinions and rules and views on, you know, a small percentage sometimes of successful people that we're looking at, and then think, well, that must be truth. It's actually funny, you know, when I was really young, I had a mentor, and I asked him, you know, what are one of the fastest ways to become more successful in life? And he actually said the opposite. He said, go and study unsuccessful people and then do the opposite of what they do. So it's kind of funny. He was like, take their rules and then create new rules that are the opposite of their rules, basically. But it's so easy. It's so easy to get stuck in these own rules that we put on ourselves, and kind of tricking ourselves into thinking that because we've created it as a rule, you know, it's going to get us to the next level. Now, what's interesting is often the thinking that's got you to where you are today is not the same set of thinking that needs to get you to that next level. So actually, it's not about keeping the rule often. I believe that you've got to be flexible, and sometimes you need to change the rules. So a perfect example of this is I had a rule for many, many, many years that my mindset practice had to happen in the morning. It had to happen first thing. It had to be a minimum an hour. And that was the thing that was driving the success that was going to set up my day. Now, that's what got me to a certain place in my own journey and my own level of success. So for me, I was like, that's validated, that works. And then my life got busier and busier, and I started traveling more, and there were time zones, and just I noticed sometimes it just didn't happen first thing. And I started noticing that I still got it done each day, but sometimes it was 15 minutes, and sometimes it was actually at midday, and for some reason those days flowed better, and I was happier, and everything worked better, and I was like, what is going on? And then I realized that I was living by this rule that I'd created, which had got me to a certain point, but instead what was more important at the next stage I was going to is addressing what needs to happen first, and then dropping into a state of ease and flow, still staying committed to my outcomes each day. So it was actually about completely shifting that rule in that case.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue. It's like we designed this. When we talk about, because I believe very much we create these rules in a time and place, and then we change. Time changes us. Whatever the situation changes, the future happens, and we have to adapt to it. So a couple of questions I like to ask everybody. The first is, what makes a person future-proof, do you think?
I think it's their ability to stay grounded in their own vision. So obviously we never know what's going to show up each and every single day, and we chatted about that. Are you reactive or are you responsive? But I believe that you're future-proof if you're totally clear on the vision that you're creating for you. Perfect.
So what rule of your own do you think you could break in the coming year?
That's a really great question. What rule of my own do I think I could break in the coming year? Maybe a rule that I have to show up in some way each and every single day for my business. So even if it's just an hour, and I'm committed to having a full day in bliss somewhere in nature, I still find myself connecting with team, and really feeling a sense of obligation and responsibility that I need to check in. So maybe that's something which I need to break.
Great. We'll check up on that.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of either ors, and so you can pick one or the other word or both. And if you want to add some commentary after, you're welcome to. If you don't, that's fine too. Okay?
Yeah.
Education or experience?
Can I have both?
Absolutely. You could absolutely pick both.
I would say both, but I would say personal education, self-education, instead of traditional education. But both.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Confidence or competence?
Confidence.
Renegade or status quo?
Renegade.
Change or adaptation?
Both. And having an ability to adapt to change.
Perfect. Optimist or pessimist?
Optimist.
A classic. That last one's just an easy one for everyone to feel good. Okay, so last two questions. Is there someone or something under the radar that you feel more people should know about?
Something under the radar more people should know about.
Someone or something.
Okay, I think if I was to be talking to the masses right now, I would love more people to know that if they're looking to change their life and their results and manifest what they want, it's 80% psychology, it's 80% their mindset, their internal rewiring, and that's the stuff they really need to go to work on. I see so many people working so hard and being busy, and they're on this treadmill and nothing's shifting, and they have big dreams and goals, but they're not rewiring themselves to succeed. I would love them to know that.
Perfect. Okay, so perfect follow-up question, which is the final question. If you could have our listeners ask themselves any question, what would you have them ask themselves?
I would have them ask themselves the question of, if I was to create a life that was totally on my terms, in a way where it was in full alignment and I had everything that I desired in my life or manifesting into my life, what exactly would be going on through every area of life? I'd love them to get clear on that.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much, Regan. That is the summation of my questions, and I know we're on an abbreviated timeline.
Yeah.
So we buzzed through it. You smashed it. It was great.
Amazing.